I've got a question for you at this point. I'd like you to list, first of all, some of the advantages of a thin client. Now take a second to see if you can think of some of the advantages. Pause the video if you like. Okay, let's take a look at some of the advantages. A thin client like RT WebParts, well, first and foremost, it's got no installation to speak of. There's no big, rich, huge install of Visual Basic for applications, which is, 7 megabytes in size, or excuse me, 70 megabytes in size. There's no huge footprint. It's a thin client. So typically, the only thing you'd have to install for this to work here, this is RT WebParts, of course, or Sharepoint with RT WebParts. The only thing you'd have to install to get any of this stuff to work is the SVG plugin, which is a standard plugin. It's available from Adobe. So a very thin install. There's really no VPN tunneling involved in getting to your process data. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but if you're trying to use Process Book from outside your network, typically what people have to do is they'd have to use something like a VPN client to get to that data, because no system manager is going to allow the specific ports that Process Book relies on to be open generally. So this is process data, and it's coming in over the internet, over port 80. It's done in a secure way. And so that's a huge advantage of using this thin client. It's of course a lot easier to share something here. If I were to go in and make changes to this, then everybody who can get to this web page, see this URL up here, everybody who can get to that now has the update. So that's very easy to share. If you've ever tried pushing out a new spreadsheet to 50 users, you know how difficult it is to share things across a huge organization. And not only is it easy to share, it's easy to manage the permissions. If I go into Site Actions, I can specify security. I can go in and change site settings, modify the security in a way that's well defined, by Microsoft for SharePoint. And then typically, I guess this is not inconsiderable. Sometimes it's less expensive. I don't want to say all the time. I know you really ought to talk to your salesman about that, but typically Process Book as a rich client, and if you simply have somebody who needs to look at displays, well, they maybe don't need a rich client like that. So this would be a thinner, less expensive solution. So those are some of the advantages of having a thin client. I'd like to ask you another question. What are some of the features of Microsoft SharePoint? Again, pause the video if you like. Think of some answers. Okay, ready? So some of the features of Microsoft SharePoint, and I'd start with first and foremost in my mind, is the collaboration feature. This is a wonderful way for people to build things that other people can see. Again, using this is an example. I can build this display. Everybody else can look at this display. If there's something going on in production, you want to share it, no better way to collaborate quickly. Now I've just navigated to a document library. On this document library, you can share traditional traditional files like Word documents or Excel spreadsheets, as you're seeing right here. Okay. The other thing about this is there are lots of web parts available. That's a very nice thing about a feature about Microsoft, anything from Microsoft. Once Microsoft jumps onto a technology, pretty much everybody else that wants to stay in business is going to be supporting it. So, we've got all kinds of interesting web parts that are available. This is just the tip of the iceberg, looking at things like this link web part. So there's a variety of things that are available. You have the ability to do alerts. So that, for example, a web part page changes, you can have somebody or have an email go to you. Now, since there are a variety of web parts, there's also the capability of having connections. If you recall, I showed you how just by setting specific connection settings within the web parts that ship from Microsoft, I can link Microsoft web parts to the OSIsoft web parts, so that when I click on a specific tree view control, that's going to go out and make changes to, for example, a document library that's showing operating instructions. So things like that, the ability to do connections, big advantage of, or big feature of Microsoft SharePoint. And of course, finally, if you do have Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, the MOSS, MOS has the search capability, the crawl and search capability, so you can search for documents that really have any kind of content. Now remember, SharePoint it's just one vendor's opinion of how to do collaboration. I mean, there are other vendors. SAP has collaboration. What do they call them? iView, which are kind of analogous to WebParts. That they have a portal technology, and we do support that. And I suppose, if the Nintendo Wii takes over the world of manufacturing, I suppose we'll support that portal. But, it's really we're agnostic as to whose portal we're going to support. We really just want to go where the customers want us to go. We think currently, of course, Microsoft has the best technology. So, of course, we're supporting Sharepoint as the underpinnings for RT WebParts.